blood. He's handing me a tray with ice and 3 fingers in the ice. And his hand right here splits like a banana peel. When most people get into woodworking or home improvement, you get a table saw, much like this one. It's a job site saw. And when you get one of the biggest fears you have is cutting off a finger. And that's totally justifiable. There's over 60,000 table saw related injuries a year. And you would think most of those are just by people running their hand through the blade or not paying attention and then cut a finger off, but that's not true. A vast majority of those are by something that most people don't even know exists. It's kickback. Now, most people don't know what kickback is, and that's totally fine. You probably won't know what it is until it accidentally happens to you one time, or you're watching some how-to video and you kind of stumble across what it is and how it happens, and you kind of come to a realization of how lucky you are it hasn't happened to you yet. Now, as a butcher or meat cutter, whatever you want to call it, for almost 20 years of my life, and during that time, I spent thousands of hours using equipment that was designed to cut through bone and meat as efficiently as possible. And I still have all my fingers. The reason for that is because I had to learn how to become efficient and safe at the same time. Now, the reason why there's 60,000 table saw related injuries a year is because people are trying to be efficient and not safe. So how to be safe and efficient at the same time is to be able to understand what can possibly go wrong and be able to be safe quickly. And to do that is just to understand how a kickback is going to happen and how to prevent it. Video's kind of boring. You want to hear stories in the meat department? Okay, so story time. This one's nasty. It was back when I was an apprentice, just very first starting off. I think I was maybe less than a year into it, but I was working with a guy. He was just over on bandsaw, just cutting the fastest I've ever seen someone do. It was busy, but he was just going fast. It's like on the bandsaw, just knocking these pork chops off like just crazy. And I was standing over my block, just minding my own business, going pretty slow, but just watching it out of the corner of my eye, just thinking like, wow, this guy's going so fast. He's so good. I wish I was as good as him. I wish I was as fast as him. Not really realizing what he was doing. But he's over on the bandsaw just cutting and cutting, but he's standing in front of the bandsaw, and as he's pushing the stuff into it, he's pushing it in like this. As you could see where the disaster is about to happen. And he's over there just going, I'm over here just minding my business. I hear the bandsaw stop, and I'm not really paying too much attention to it. But then I catch him out of the corner of my eye. He's just standing there staring at me, like just dead right at me. He's got his hand behind his back, just like this. Just staring at me, just like that. And I'm still like this, facing my block, seeing him out of the corner of my eye, like, what? What's going on? Did I do something wrong? I'm getting nervous like I did something wrong. He's just standing there. Then from the other side of the meat department, my manager comes out through the cooler doors. He stops, and the meat cutter's back is turned to him like this. He comes out, stops. I see out of the corner of my eye, him just stop, like, just pale in the face. I'm like, uh-oh. So I stop, I turn. This guy's still looking at me like this. Manager's just staring at, like, the back of him, staring at me too. We're all just standing there, frozen. Like, I don't know what's going on, but I know something's bad going on. And I think it's about me. Finally, the manager comes up. This guy's just still standing there staring at me, dead cold. Manager comes up behind him and says, let me see it. This guy pulls his hand front like this, facing directly at me like we are right now. And his hand right here splits like a banana peel. Just, his thumb is touching right here. Oh, I about lose it. Manager standing here is like, oh no! I'm standing there just pale, I'm just like, ugh. This guy's just standing there cold in his face, this blood. Oh man, that was nasty. He just stands there. Manager comes up behind him, grabs his hand, puts it up like that, grabs his apron, wraps it up, this real nasty, dirty apron, wraps it up real quick, and they just fly out of the meat department. I'm standing there by myself, just blood everywhere, just in complete shock. Like, what? That was one of the top 3 worst ones. Yeah, I'll get to the other 2 later. Now, kickback is exactly what it sounds like. It's when you're cutting a piece of wood on a table saw, it comes back here, it catches the back of a tooth, and it fires right up at you. Now, what makes this so dangerous is this force and the speed of which this piece of wood is going to come flying back at you. Now, the average table saw spins at about 4,000 to 5,000 RPMs, meaning if a piece of wood catches one of these teeth and gets hurled back at you, it could get up to speeds of 2,000 miles per hour. Now, I know that sounds completely unbelievable, but it's actually true. And at that speed, it can kill you. Or at bare minimum, it's gonna bruise the hell out of you. Now, one of the most common ways kickback can happen is when you're doing something like a cross cut. And as you're pushing it through, there could be a space between your fence and the actual blade. You're coming through and you pull one piece off and you leave your offcut in here. It could vibrate back and forth a little bit while you're messing around with this piece or while you're trying to get another piece, and your offcut will catch a tooth, jump up on top of your blade, and fire right back at you. So the easiest way to prevent one of the most common ways to get kickback is when you push these through and you're finished with the cut, get them both off the table. Pick them both up at the same time, or pick your good piece up and push the offcut off onto the floor, or just get it out of the way of the blade. It's that simple, really. Now, another good way to prevent this, it's definitely not as efficient. I really don't use it that much, but it is still a very, very good way to prevent this. So when you get your fence all lined up, you get your piece lined up exactly where you want to cut it, you take your fence completely away, move it away from where your cut is actually going to happen, push this through, and then you can push your offcut way over here, you take your piece off over this way, and you don't have any worry about it vibrating over it and getting caught and kicked back at you. Now, the reason I say this is not as efficient is you go through all the time setting up your fence, getting it all perfect, and then you have to completely take it away. It's not the most efficient way. I don't like to do it because if I'm setting my fence up, I'm going to use it to guide the cut. But since I'm doing that, I'm also making sure when I get the cut all the way through, get both pieces away from the blade. That way you're staying efficient and you're staying safe. Now, the next most popular way kickback happens is when you're doing a rip cut. And a rip cut is when you make a long cut all the way down with the grain of the wood. And what happens is as you're cutting, the kerf will close and pinch the back of the blade. This happens kind of often with construction grade wood that still has a pretty high moisture content still left in it. And I'm sure you've noticed this when you're making a long cut and it starts to like get really, really hard. And it almost feels like the wood is pushing back against you and you start pushing even harder and it just won't budge. Well, that's the kerf closing. And when the kerf closes, it pinches the back of the blade. And when it pinches the back of the blade will catch it, pull the wood up on top of the blade and kick it right back at you, pretty much right back at your face. Now, when this is happening, the only thing you should do is stop the cut. Don't try to force it through or muscle it through, because what you're really doing is pushing as hard as you can with all your might, trying to lean in towards a spinning blade. That's just going to lead to disaster. Just stop the cut. So the only thing you could really do to finish the cut is take the wood out, flip it, and start from the other side. But the big problem with that is no matter how you're going to do it, if you're going to still get through the cut, the wood is still going to be bowed completely. It's just the way it is. If that starts to happen, if you start getting that pinch, stop. Get a new piece of wood, let that one sit from the side. It's going to dry out eventually, and then you can use it. But at that time, don't try to force it. All right, so here's another story. This one's kind of wild. It is really messed up. But I was working in this meat department. Everyone called it the dungeon because it was this like department that was kind of set off by itself. There was no windows, there was no service case, there was nothing. It was just like a cold room where everyone was back there just cutting meat. And the top like 1.5 feet of it was just pure smoke because there was like 7 or 8 guys back there at a time just chains smoking like a tire fire. Completely stunk. You could barely see. But I was back there, I was working with a guy, he was a veteran guy, hardened, just type of meat cutter. And we were cutting pork chops again. He was on the bandsaw just like whipping them through, just like going like crazy. And I was standing kind of like a little ways, about 3 feet away from him, trying to tray him up as fast as I possibly could, get them all in trays and slide them down the line. It was like an assembly line type thing. But he's over there, he's just like going and going and going and going and going and going. And again, I'm just looking at him like, wow, this guy is so fast. These guys are crazy. And he was just going, all of a sudden, he just shuts the saw off. He hits it with his knee and shuts it off. And I'm thinking, oh, good, I can finally like catch up. This guy, completely emotionless, not even a squeak, nothing. Shuts the saw off, walks over to the other side where there's an ice machine, grabs a cup like a tray, scoops up some ice, walks back over to the saw where we were both standing, and I'm standing there still trying to just like catch up, trying to tray all these pork chops up. He cut off 3 of his fingers, like right off through here, picks them up, puts them in this ice. He goes, hey, hold these. I look over and he's handing me a tray with ice and 3 fingers in the ice. I'm saying there's like, and he's like, oh, hold him. So I grab him, and by this time, like the ice is all starting to turn red. His fingers are still bleeding completely out. I'm just, again, just completely, whoa. This guy, completely emotionless, stone cold calm. I'm sitting there holding, he reaches over with his last 2 fingers, starts covering it up with ice. This blood just coming out, and he's just like covering it, like fingers up with some ice because I'm just frozen. And he's just like, come on. Walks to the store manager's office with his fingers just still, it just, and I'm walking behind like just completely just out of my mind. Walk to the store manager, he's like, gotta go to the hospital. Store manager looks up, why? Well, store manager is like, whoop, jumps up, grabs the little like cup of fingers, takes off to the hospital. That dude was stone cold. Now the third way, and probably the least common way kickback's gonna occur, but it can definitely still occur, is it's very similar to the first way, and it's when you're pushing a piece of wood through the cut and the back tooth catches the wood, pulls it up, sets it on top of the blade, fires it back at you. Now the difference between this way and the third way is the third way you're finished with the cut and it's a loose piece sitting on the table saw and it catches it and throws it back at you. This one happens anywhere inside the cut. Now this one is 100% user error. And I say that because it's when the wood becomes loose. It's when you could be halfway through a cut, get distracted, look away, or just ease up on the wood. It starts to get loose, it starts to vibrate, and then it lifts up just enough to where a tooth will catch it, kick it right back at you. That's why you need steady pressure and force on your wood all the way through the cut. You never want to let up. You need to stay focused on your cut. So those are the 3 main ways kickback happens and active ways to stay safe and stay effective and stay efficient. But there's also ways to stay passively safe, meaning you don't really have to do anything outside the ordinary. It's just things that are already on your saw or things that you already use while you're using your table saw that can keep you safe from kickback. Now the number one thing is your safety equipment that comes with the saw. Now the first piece of safety equipment that comes with any table saw you buy is the shroud or the cover. Now I would show you mine, but like most people, I found it to be very, very, very cumbersome. It got in the way, I hated it. I took it off and got lost and probably just threw it away at some point in time. But they are for safety measures because a lot of them do have anti-kickback knives on the back of them. Now for safety reasons, you should leave it on, and I should say you should leave it on, but I find it to be more cumbersome than what they're actually worth, so that's why I took it off. But one thing that comes with all new table saws that you have to leave on, if anything, leave it on, is your riving knife. So this is the riving knife. This is the thing that comes on every single new saw made, and it raises it and lowers with the blade, so it's always at a perfect height. And what this thing is supposed to do is it protects the back of the blade from anything hitting it. And since you're protecting the back of the blade, you're basically eliminating all 3 ways kickback can happen. Because remember, they all happen when the board hits the back of the blade and it fires it at you. So if you protect the back of the blade so nothing can actually hit it, you're basically eliminating. It's a very passive way to stay safe. So don't take this thing off. I actually, when I first got this and I was playing around with it and seeing if it was more efficient to have this off, I didn't see any change in speed, usability, or anything. So I put it back on just to stay safe. There's no reason to take it off. So just leave it. Okay, last story. This is hands down the worst one. So I'm about 7, maybe 8 years in my meat cutting career. And I've seen a hand split open like a banana. I've been handed fingers. I've seen 100 cuts. It's just, I'm thinking I've seen it all. Nothing's gonna get me. So I'm working in this one meat department and this clerk is over on what we call the cuber or the tenderizer. Basically what it is these like 2 serrated wheels that kind of like interlock and is kind of like constantly spinning. You put meat down in between them, and as it goes through, it kind of tenderizes it and shreds it up a little bit, and it pops out the bottom. And as it pops out the bottom, grabs it, put it back in there, and it runs through the wheels again, and you just kind of keep repeating that process. But now there's a protective piece over it. It's called a shroud that kind of goes over it. It's a cap to where you should not be able to reach your fingers down in there. But we figured out if you just take off the magnet on that shroud, you can take the shroud off, put the magnet on it, the wheels are still gonna spin just fine, and you don't have to worry about pieces of meat getting stuck in this like little shroud thing. Well, this clerk is over on there, just going through, putting meat in there, putting pieces of beef, making cube steak or something. She's just going through there, going through there. The loudest scream I have ever heard, like the shrill out of a movie. It was just, like, it hits you right down into your bones. Look over, her hand from about here down was through the cuber, and you could see the bottom of her fingers just spread in every single direction. It's just mutilated. And everyone in the meat department was like completely freaking out because she's standing there, hands in this cuber, screaming, just just jerking, moving around. Everyone's trying to stop her, trying to figure out like how to get her hand, but you can't get her hand up because the cuber is like, it's all one unit really, except for the wheels, which are in a separate like encasing unit that goes down into the machine. And there's really no way to like pull her in because it's not designed to be able to pull things out of it. It has to go all the way through. So everyone's like freaking out. They end up taking this whole cuber, like the wheel assembly completely out with her hands still just in it. Just fingers are just completely every direction. Oh my God. And it is not, they ended up having to take her to the hospital with the whole unit. Like she had to hold this whole thing. That one was rough. Now, the last passive way to prevent kickback is using a proper push stick. And I'm going to say that's passive because you're not going to have to change anything because you should be using a push stick, but you should be using the right one. And this is the one that comes with basically every single table saw there is. It's called a bird's beak. Now, as soon as you get a table saw, the first thing you should make is a new push stick because these things are okay at best, but they can actually cause kickback. Specifically, the third kind of kickback, when the wood raises up a little bit and it gets kicked back, it's because of the way these things are designed and the uniqueness of a job site saw and how tiny our working surface is. So let me show you. Okay, so just due to the size of how small this job site table saw is, these things are not ideal because this is how you're supposed to use them. So when you use one of these, it's just it hooks on the back of here and the front of it goes on here like this to apply pressure pushing down. But what's happening is since the front of this is so short, you're putting all the pressure right back here, right in the back inch and a half of the wood, which is basically just making a lever. And because these job site saws are so short, when you push on it, what you're gonna do is lift it up a little bit. And when you lift it up a little bit, sometimes you can get above the riving knife right here, catch the back tooth, and this thing's just gonna come flying right back at you. So the really easy way around this is just either make or buy yourself a new push stick. So there's a couple companies that make push pads or push sticks, those things right there. I'll leave a link for those down below. They're getting really, really popular. I haven't used one yet because I made my own. Now I made this one out of just a ruined epoxy project and it works perfect for me. The main goal of this is just basically be able to have a little hook on the back and hook onto the actual wood and then be able to extend a good ways into it so you can apply pressure straight down instead of just right back here. This way you have it hooked in here, your hand's nice and clear, you got a good stable hold on it and you can push it straight through. And make sure you put it always in the middle of the wood that you're cutting. That way you're not going to lean to one side or the other or do anything silly. It's just going to be right there in the middle. And this is a perfect passive way to prevent kickback because like I said, you should already be using a push stick. And if you just make one of these, you'll use it every single time. Never have to worry about kickback. So in a nutshell, that's what kickback is in active and passive ways to prevent it. And the reason why I wanted to go over kickback, because it's not common sense. Now, when I got into meat cutting almost 20 years ago, I had a bunch of guys tell me, you better be fast and you better be safe. To me, that sounded wild because how can you go fast using all this equipment that's specifically designed to cut through bone and meat and still stay safe? Luckily, I had people around me to teach me all the little things that were not common sense. The common sense is, yeah, don't put your hand into the blade, keep your fingers away. But it's not common sense to know little things that can cause accident. Like it's not common sense to know what a riving knife is and how it protects the back of the blade. And if you're using a bird's beak push stick, you can actually create a lever pushing the wood up, which is gonna catch the back tooth, set it on top of the blade and kick back at you. That's not common sense. That has to be taught some way. These table saws are very dangerous. They cause 60,000 plus injuries a year, but there's a way to prevent all of those injuries. And that's just knowing the things that can cause the problem and learning how to prevent them. So I hope this video helped somebody. And as always, thank you so much for watching and I will see you next time.